Hello everyone, and welcome to this little episode on painting or airbrushing with Tamiya paints. And I know you might be shocked at the facial here. I think this is the first video where you're going to see me with my beard. It's a little bit of an experiment. I haven't had one in a long time, and I just wanted to check out and see if it's still there, and apparently it is. So, alright, so today we're going to do a little paint working with our Tamiya colors. Definitely, how would I put this? There's a lot of videos out there on YouTube and elsewhere, and everyone's going to have a little bit of a variation. And hopefully what I contribute will also add more to the soup of this great hobby and painting experience that we have. So, there it is, and I always want to thank all the some of the viewers who have encouraged me to get to this very spot, because it's taken me a long time to talk about painting. It's something I'm very uncomfortable with, but I think you know, you gotta move forward, you know. So here we go, painting. All right, so before we get there, I'm just going to assume that you, the viewer, you already got your airbrush and it's ready to go. I'm not here to talk about which airbrush is better or worse. That's another topic for another video and for another day. Today I'm going to be using my airbrushes that I got available right now, which is a Badger Chrome and Badger Patriot. And we got some Tamiya paint. Let's see what we got here. We got today we're going to be painting with Tamiya's XF63. It's just German gray, and we're going to paint it right out of the bottle. I will say that I do mix paints with the Tamiya. I think they mix well, and I've had a lot of positive experiences with it. I know other people on their YouTube channels have done as well. Of note would be Andy's Hobbies, where he did an episode on olive drab painting, and they took Tamiya paints and mixed it to make a nice olive drab tone, which I would like to try out sometime. One of my favorites right now, and I learned from a fine gentleman, is I've been mixing for my German dark yellow color. Forgive me, I don't know the German term. It's a dunkel something. He takes Tamiya's dark yellow, which I believe is XF60, and he mixes it with buff XF57, you know, 50-50, and I just drop it into a container here, and I mixed this back in July, and it was filled right to the top, and as I needed it, I used it. And so I just got a little bit left. I think it'll be done pretty soon. Got a few things to paint, but it works really well. I just use a little coffee stick here, and I twirl it, and it's good to go. It's all mixed. Alright, so that's some of the things you can do with the Tamiya paints. I think they mix well. Alright, moving forward, what are some things you need? Equipment. I always say you're going to need some pipettes. You're going to need something to stir your paint. I am a fan of stirring my paint in the paint cup of the airbrush, and that's been a long journey because I used to do it other ways, and I've found that this is the most efficient for me, and it might be for you. And that's that. Okay, alright, so I got a confession. And the pipettes are good. I am a big fan of the pipette. I've only, maybe within the last year or two, have I been using pipettes. I used to just take the Tamiya bottle, you know, shake it, stir it, and just kind of pour it into my airbrush paint cup. Well, that presents problems. One of them is that it will be really hard to twist open sometimes, because you always get paint inside the threads, and you gotta take a wrench or a hammer and smash it. Especially the old enamel paints when I was a kid. I used to do that a lot. And one other thing you do if you do start getting paint, and let's look at the sucker. This one's not bad. I got some worse ones. But you get a lot of lumps and clumps of dried up paint, and when you're turning this thing open, well, you're risking some of that stuff that's going to get in there. And you know, your pipette might suck one up and drop it in, and that thing ends up in your airbrush. Well, now you gotta break down your brush, clean it, get that thing out, and start over again. So I always say use the pipettes, you know, really, and take care of your bottles, and you're not gonna have the problems become less likely to happen. That's what I say. There's always gonna be a problem, especially with airbrushing, but you're reducing those chances. Alright, I hope I haven't lost anybody. I know it looks daunting. I got a lot of stuff back here, but it's all good. Alright, so let's talk about getting it in there. So I got the airbrush here. Yeah, just use your pipette, drop it in, and then I throw in my thinner. Let's talk about the thinner. With Tamiya, I am a believer of the lacquer thinner with Tamiya paints. And yes, they do have their thinner, which is here. And if I'm a good person, I would always say follow the recommendations of whatever the company product is. If Vallejo says use this kind of thinner, use that. If AK says use this kind of thinner, use that. And as you get experience and you're more comfortable, you can branch out and try different types of thinning techniques. Not really going to get into that. I tend to be pretty much, I just use the product. With the exception, I do use the lacquer. It does work. And I like it. So, consistency of ratios, you know, people are going to give you a ratio, or they're going to say consistency of milk, or, you know what, the milk thing, I don't get it. I actually took a thing of milk once, and I put the milk in a little cup, and I'm kind of looking at it, the consistency of milk. I don't know, I was really lost. And then the ratio thing, and I'm not really good with numbers. Math is not my thing. So what I do like is I'll just do a paint test. Here's my paint cup, and when my paint's and my thinner's in there, you know, I'm stirring it. And what I'll do is I'll just take my paintbrush and I'll just put some up against the wall, and I'll draw it back. And I'm just going to look for, does the paint stay on the wall, or does the paint run back down? And what I have found is that if it's running back down and it's not sticking to the wall, we're in a good spot. And as you're painting, you do your practice brush strokes. You'll see where you're at and you can adjust it. But generally, I've been very successful with that technique. And again, as you get more comfortable with painting, you're going to find variances of where it works comfortable for you, and that's kind of like how it is. Alright, so that's that part. Yeah, so at this point, you know, we've thrown in our paint, we got our thinner, we're ready to go. That's one part of the package. The other part of the package is, you know, the thing that you're painting. So let's talk about that. There's different ways to approach that. In this case, what are we painting today? We're going to be painting pieces of my German half-track. So I got to get these fenders painted. And they've all been assembled. They got putty and filling. I've done all my sanding. Done everything that I need to do to get me to the painting session. I haven't done this, but what I would recommend is after you've done all your sanding and all that prep work, it's not a bad idea to maybe get it cleaned up a little bit. Either wipe it down or take a wet Q-tip, kind of, especially where you get your putty, get all that cleaned up. Maybe you got some fingerprints you want to clean up, get that. Is it a huge deal? Yes and no. It depends on where you are, what level of modeling you're at, and what your ultimate end game is, you know. But in this case, I didn't do any real cleanup. I sanded it, I blew it off, and I'm good to go. I'm pretty comfortable with it. Alright. next part is, though, how do you want to paint it? You can hold it and paint it. You can put it on an alligator clip and paint your piece. Or you can tape it to a plate, like a paper plate. I use a lot of paper plates. Hold on. Yes, paper plates. I use these a lot. I use it for my test strokes before I start painting. And also I'll just take a piece of painter's tape or even Tamiya tape, make a loop, slap it on, and especially if I'm doing like certain round flat objects, I'll hit in there and get it done. And it's all good. Okay, so we talked about the clips, different things. There's also these little clampy things. You know, they work pretty good. You might think that, like, you know, they're gonna like really like damage the plastic, especially the alligator clips, because it got those, like, you know, teeth. I haven't had any really noticeable bad experiences with any of that stuff. They grab really well and they don't really leave marks. The only thing that you need to do, though, if you're going to be using clips and clamps, is that obviously you need to go back and paint those spots. So you're kind of going to have to do it, paint them again. With the acrylics and even the Tamiya paints, the dry time is really fast, so it's an acceptable, what I would call an acceptable hindrance. All right. So we got all that done. I do put my, if I'm using my sticks and alligators, I'll put them on a styrofoam board. It is very light and loose and fragile, so sometimes I'll put like a little weight, something that's got a little heaviness, a heft, just to keep it down. Alright. As far as painting, painting strokes, you know, I used to read some magazines where it's like, especially one magazine company, I'm not going to mention it, and but they like to, they call it the pass. You know, like when you're using rattle can spray paint. You know, I remember, you know, they want you to, you know, it's a pass. A pass. I think in the beginning I tried using that. It works on some things, but in my experience, especially with military modeling, it's not going to happen. You're working with a lot of funny angles, a lot of different things, a lot of nooks and crannies. A pass, you'll never get coverage. You need to kind of really get in there. And I think I got a few examples that are help explain that. So let's look at technique. Like, okay, you know, this is obviously a very flat piece. A pass would be a good method to just, you know, yeah, okay. I won't use a pass, but it's acceptable here. It makes sense. Now, if I'm doing let's go back to these fenders, though. It's like, all right, I've already added parts. There's pioneering tools, there's antenna, there's pieces of a muffler, there's all these things. A lot of detail things, and a pass, you're just going to miss stuff. So you're going to want to go in there and carefully kind of hit it. And then hopefully I'll illustrate that once we get into the painting session. But obviously a pass isn't going to really work. You kind of have to kind of hit it. I hit it in patches, you know, kind of like short bursts here and there. And I'm building up my paint. I don't go hell-bent fury, like, you don't need to. The best effects you're going to get is just building up. Even if you have to start with a dust, doesn't matter. As long as you build, and you can have more control with that. You can determine how much you want. But if you throw a lot of paint on, well, you've already, you know, you can't go back unless you clean it and start over. And I tend to be more on the cautious side most of the time anyway with regards to painting. That way I can take my time, breathe, and move on. So you'll see more of that once we get into the actual painting session. And pretty much that's about it. I don't have anything else to say as far as some of the things I brought to the table. I think we covered that. my thing is always don't be intimidated when you're painting. You know, you can lose a lot of time in this hobby kind of worrying about things you don't need to. I would always recommend just get out there and try it. You're going to need experience. Experience is what builds you up in this hobby. Just try it out. You're going to learn something. Every time you engage in it, you're going to be learning. And that's a powerful experience in anything in life. So, and really can't put a price tag on that. So my recommendation is always try it. Keep doing it. Keep learning. Ask questions. Ask people. We have the YouTube and the internet, and it's ask people. There's a ton of great people out here in the modeling YouTube arena. Even forums. You know, they're out there. Just shout. Give a shout. Most people are going to be willing to give you a hand. All right. Well, that was the painting process, and sorry for a few things. I've you know, filming videos and trying to give a tutorial. It's all a work in progress, and hopefully future videos will improve, right? Because even the video making, I think I was talking to Tactical Jackalope once. You know, even that's becoming a hobby. And we're learning and getting better. So I think one of the things is I spray with my left hand. I'm a left-handed person, southpaw, and I think would have been easier if my camera was on my left side. That way you can actually see directly the paint going onto the product. Because if it's on my right, it's really hard to get that right angle. Overall, though, the paint job came out really nice. Sometimes it doesn't work. I'll admit it. You know, sometimes people go, oh, you know, oh, Russ, you know, I mean, you make it look so easy, but it's not true. A lot of mistakes happen. A lot of things don't work right. I think I just got lucky. No, seriously though, if you follow kind of like what I talked about as far as thinning it, prepping it, doing things, 9 times out of 10 it should be fine. One thing you might notice when I was painting, I didn't really paint the antennas on the fenders of my truck. Let's see if I can pick this up. Here it is. I left those off because I still got to put the superstructure on, and that will get hit. I just tried to really, my primary objective was really to get all that stuff that's underneath where the tracks are going to be, all that chassis and suspension system, because that'll just wouldn't work being able to paint it had I glued it. And but there it is. You get the product. Those fenders are on. They look good. They're solid. They'll be. I'll do a little bit of weathering on the inside of the fenders, and then I'll finally glue them up, and then I can putty. Hopefully, I can show you what was the bane of my issue. Is if you see these two black one here, one there's a little black. Those are the holes where the insert pins for the fenders went in. So now once they're glued in, I can take some filler, fill all that in, and start working on the inside. So overall, really impressed with how it all came out. What are things that could have gone wrong? That's always a question. Well, there's always something. Troubleshooting, obviously with the airbrush, that's always a thing. I always keep a little bit of, I keep a little palette and aluminum, get a palette, plastic, aluminum, whatever, a little bit of palette with a little bit of a Q-tip, because sometimes you will get paint on your needle. Just take the little nozzle off and kind of give it a little scrub. That happens a lot. The paint will dry right on the needle, depending if your paint's really thin or whatever. Luckily, there was no impediments inside the paint cup. Like I mentioned before, little paint chunks. I've had hair from a Q-tip, like the little fuzz, get inside with the needle and the nozzle, and that caused issues. It doesn't take much, so always work with that. When possible, because that was a fender system, I don't know if you noticed, but I did intentionally, I wasn't painting where plastic was going to be glued to plastic. If you do paint, I always recommend, and even everybody's try not to do that, because you want that paint, the glue plastic to plastic. If there's paint, the glue will eat through the paint and then glue the plastic. I mean, it'll just be a little bit of a weaker bond. Plus, some of that paint will absorb the glue and kind of get all icky and stuff. What can you do if you do get paint? Well, if you catch it beforehand, I'll just take a little bit of a sandpaper and kind of sand it out. Other concerns, if you noticed, I don't have any kind of like venting system. It's something that I want to do in the future, get a complete spray booth. But I'm painting right in the room. I mean, there's dust and hair. Don't worry about it. If you get a dust or a hair, it's just a minor setback. If it's really noticeable and it's really irritating you, take some high-grade fine sandpaper, like 3000, 2000, 1000, somewhere in that ballpark. Kind of buff it out to where that hair will come out. Smooth that a little bit, and then go back and paint it. It's a small step back, but it's not the end of the world, and you're going to be okay. And there it is. And as I wrap up, my last piece I'm going to say, I'm sure I've missed a ton of things, but that's just the way it is. I'm going to go over cleaning. Cleaning is essential. You must take care of your airbrush. Doesn't matter what airbrush you have, they're all the same. You gotta clean it. It gets dirty, you gotta clean it. My paint sessions usually run, I try not to go more than 45 minutes on an individual paint session. You do risk of overheating your compressor depending on what you're shooting. In my case, my compressor gets a little hot when I was shooting some Vallejo and some really bad enamel once, and it doesn't matter. You can have all the regulators and the absorption doohickeys to soak up the water. If you're shooting bad paint and you're overheating, it's going to condense and moisture traps. Doesn't matter. You can have 20 on your hose. It's still going to have problems. So I'll save those troubleshootings for a day. You can work around them. But I always say, if you're using a small compressor like mine, 45 minutes, let it cool down. If it gets hot, that is something you should be concerned about. So, cleaning, yeah, let's get down to the bench and talk about cleaning, because yeah, it's fun. We pay money for these tools. They're nice. I believe if you take care of them, they're going to last you a lifetime. So be nice to your airbrushes so that they can shoot well for you. Alright, let's go down to the bench and wrap up. Alright, here we are. We're done. We're done airbrushing for tonight. And we're going to break down the complete airbrush, get it nice and squeaky clean so that it's ready to go for the next paint session, whenever that may be. So as it is, I got paint. I got probably just a wee bit of paint left in my paint cup. At this point, it's not really worth much to dump. Sometimes I'll just go and I'll dump it in my Sparmax doohickey thing, but there's really not much in there, so I'm just going to go in and throw in some thinner. In this case, I'll just stick with the old lacquer thinner. Now some people may say, oh no, don't do that, you know, the lacquer thinner may ruin the chrome finish on your paint cup. That's true. I definitely have some paint cups that don't look so good on some airbrushes, but so far it's been pretty good. You could even use some of this thinner, it'd be fine. And yeah, you can always go right with the airbrush cleaner, which will be the main puppy that I'll be using to clean down my internal parts. So I got a little bit thinner in there, swish it around. I usually just go in with cotton buds. Alright, just go in and I'll just start kind of scrubbing gently, you know, just getting the walls of the paint cup, kind of getting whatever paint is up there, and go both sides, and we're pretty decent. Throw it out in your trash can, bring out my little guy. This cleaning station thing, it works pretty good. You got a nice cotton cylinder in here that's hopefully blocking a lot of the particles that aren't good to breathe in. And for right now, this works. Again, like I mentioned before, I would like to use a spray booth. I think that would be the most efficient. And I'm just getting rid of all the whatever liquidy paint and thinner left. Always check. Just got a little bit left. Alright, so my paint's pretty much gone. I'm pretty happy. So now I'm going to go in with probably just straight airbrush cleaner. So I don't need this anymore. Don't need that. Take my pipette. Get a little bit of, and believe me, a little bit goes a long way, so I don't bother putting a lot. This stuff's pretty good. Definitely it's got some fumes, so working in ventilation is a definite plus. Again, just going to repeat the process. Again, hitting the walls. Not too worried about going down to the bottom. Getting that all clean. Do a little bit more over here. Alright. Then whatever's left, we're just going to go in, dump it in here. Alright, we're pretty happy. So, I'm happy. At this point, I really don't need the compressor on anymore. I've blown out a lot of thinner. So I'm going to shut down my compressor. One thing I do recommend is if you're not using your brush and it is hooked up, this system works pretty good. Also, some sort of like handle or grip. What I'm using right now is above me. I got some bookshelves, and I just got these small clamps. I got two. They're parallel, and I just rest my airbrush right on there. Sometimes if like I gotta go to the bathroom, gotta do an errand, or something interrupts me while I've got a live brush, I can just put it someplace safe, and it's ready to go. I know some airbrush products do come with one. I know the Posh brushes used to come with some nice stick thingies. I can actually get it and show it to you. Yeah, right here. You got the little thing. You can screw it on. Bang. Drop your airbrush on there and it hangs. So those are some things are available. Alright, I'm going to shut the compressor off. Alright, still got a little bit of air in my compressor, so let me just blow that out. Alright, so here we are, air's out, everything's ready. So I use quick changes on my airbrushes. It's really nice. I don't have to keep on unscrewing these connections, or I use different hoses. You know, everything is great. I can just snap it on, take it off. If I want to use another airbrush like this one, I can hook it right up. It's all universal. I got these on eBay. They weren't very expensive and they work great. In fact, I also have one for my where is it? Got my Posh airbrush. Same thing. Hooks up, ready to go. Disconnect, we're done. So lots of this makes things so much easier. So my hose, I'm done with my hose. I usually just hang it up and I'm done with that. So now let's get down to some of the nitty-gritty. What I'm gonna do is completely bust it down. I might want to zoom in. Let's zoom out. Alright, I'm gonna set up a little bit of, get my palette up here. Like I always get, this is my old, well actually this pipette, don't need it, so I'm gonna throw it away. I got a dirty brush, I'm gonna keep that on standby. I'm gonna take a new pipette. I'm just gonna put a little bit of airbrush cleaner in this corner, so I'll need that. Alright, so now we're going to begin kind of the breakdown. Sorry for that interruption. My memory card got completely full. So, where were we? We thinned out our paint cup, cleaned the paint cup, flushed everything out with our thinners. Now I'm ready to disassemble and clean the internal parts. So the first thing I always do is I want to take out my little nozzle that's inside here. See if we can get a little closer. And what I do is I got a cup or a little jar of a bottle with some thinner in it. So I'm going to open up. Oh boy, it's so close you can't see anything. Well, so I'm going to open it up. You know what, we're going to zoom out. I think at this point that'll be easier. So we're going to open it up. Open this up. Alright, so inside, probably won't be able to see it anyway, but because it's so small, I got a nozzle in there. Yep, I'm gonna take that pie. It's off. I drop it in there. I keep it in here nice and safe. I know where it is. I will clean that later. It is hard to clean. It's very tiny. What I usually do is every now and then I'll run it through a I believe it's an ultrasonic machine, jewelry cleaning machine, and that really gets that nice and clean. Otherwise it gets really stuck, causes some problems. These two pieces I'll just leave off to the side. At this point I'm ready to take out my needle, so I'm just going to unscrew back here. I got my lock nut. Unscrew that. Now this is where for me it was a learning curve, because you might want to just like slide the needle out. Do not do that. I find that you're gonna get everything else dirty. Just take out the whole system right from here. Unscrew it. And it's out. Then at this point I take everything all out in one motion. There you go. So what I want to do at this point, I got paint all on that needle and I don't want to run it through this stuff. that just makes everything worse. So I usually push it forward, and now I got this stuff is nice and clean. It's not tainted, so I put it off to the side. So now I just got to clean the needle. So I take my cotton bud, take a little bit of my thinner, and I begin wiping. Usually it's not that bad. The longer you let your paintbrush sit dirty, it's gonna dry. It just gets worse and worse. So I always clean my brushes immediately after my paint sessions are over. Now sometimes I'll throw in different paints in the process. That's fine, that works. But definitely I don't want to let it sit. You let it sit overnight, you may regret it. It'll be that much harder and longer to clean up. So I'm pretty good. You know, and you'll be surprised, even at this rate, I've done a little bit of wiping. I bet you tomorrow or the next time I paint, you know, I may get a little bit on there, but as long as you get most of it off. So put the needle in a safe place. I put mine in my little box. You put it in some sort of plastic cylinder or sleeve, anything, just as long as you know you don't want to bend it, and you don't want to get stabbed by it, so be safe. And all your trigger assembly, you can pull all that out. Usually one area that I do find I get paint is in the trigger. There's a little eye of the needle that sometimes gets little globs of paint get in there, and I'll usually just get a pipe cleaner. Now again, I'll just put a little bit of a thinner in there, and I'll just run the pipe cleaner through that needle eye. Yep. And just kind of run it through a little bit. And you can see definitely got paint in there. So that's good. Trigger's good. We're all happy there. Go back to our little nozzle cap fronts. There's a little bit of paint in there. So we'll just take a clean cotton bud, dip it in a little bit of cleaner, and just start getting some of that paint off. And that's not too bad. So we'll set those off to the side. At this point, what I'm left with is this piece. And this is very important. I cleaned the paint cup, that's pretty good. But you got all inside here, that's got paint inside. Always check if you put your, go and look down the barrel. Most of the time after a paint session, there's some paint in there and you can't see anything. Tonight I'm pretty lucky. I can see light at the end of the tunnel, but definitely that's not good enough. So we're going to definitely do a little bit of cleaning. There's different methods out there as far as cleaning this. I used to be using a lot of the, they give these little cleaning brushes, Badger or Pash or whatever, they got bristles on them. Most of the time, especially with my chrome, they don't fit. It's too tight. I'm using the lowest one possible, and that just, it barely works. I've actually lost a lot of bristles over the time, but right, it's still working. I'm moving towards using just reamers. They just seem to be a lot easier. Usually I'll just get a little bit of a pipe cleaner, just the front end, because usually there's a big goop of paint. It won't go all the way through, but at least I'll get a decent amount out. Just extract it. Alright. So the real fine detail is going in there with the little wire thing. And it's not that bad today, so let's go in and feel it, work your way in, kind of clean it. And check it. It's not terrible actually. But yeah, the stuff you leave in there, it will just make a mess. Paint, letting it dry, because your needle won't go in there, and then you're going to try to force your needle through, and you're going to have lots of problems. That's usually where you end up bending your needle, having problems. I've never had one before, but I assume that that's usually how it happens. Okay, so it's pretty good. And then check inside. There's not a lot of paint in there. It's really clean. Sometimes it's harder than others. I'll even go as far as to even kind of do a check. I'll even go and take a needle, just kind of run it through, make sure we're all happy. Got some good slide in there. It doesn't take much. Again, that's why I really stress cleaning your brush as much as possible. Definitely after every session, just get it really nice and clean. That way it's all the more quicker and easier to get through when you do your next paint session. So at this point, I'm pretty decent. I'm pretty happy. I'll leave most of my brush, I don't put any of the internal mechanisms inside. And I just that became a habit when I was airbrushing lacquer clear coats, because even if you do clean it, I noticed that it kind of left a residue, and so I've just gotten into a habit of just leaving the internal parts by themselves. And usually I just leave my brush in my case just like this, and I leave all the mechanisms in a separate drawer. Alright, so that's what I'll do. I'll take my drawer, put them all in there, put them in my drawer, done. Same thing with the airbrush, I'm kind of done with it. I like Badger has these little safety caps. You can use them if you want. I got my little drawer, so I'm pretty happy. I'll just leave it in there. And that's it. Okay, I did forget my little brush. Gotta make sure you take care of your little brushes, even though they're not that essential. You know, I really don't want to be buying them all the time, so let's do a little bit of cleaning. Get myself a piece of paper towel. Always have paper towels. I keep them, paper towels and Q-tips. They are always at my bench. Just do a basic clean, just to get the paint off. Yeah. Just for good measure, I just add a little bit off to the side, a little bit more. And let's check it out. Yeah, we're pretty good. So I put the brush off to the side, cap everything, get this stuff here, you know, this is harsh chemicals, so again, use ventilation. I try to keep these rags someplace out and gone outside as soon as possible, and I keep all my tools off to the side and they're ready to go for the next session, whenever, wherever that may be. Well, I hope this was a good tutorial, and alright, well, I'll see you again here on YouTube, and take care and model on.